I'm also just going to start a timer because I love talking about this subject, and I need to save some time for Shadra to talk about this wonderful project, which we'll get to. But yeah, look, we're talking about living streams in the city of Canning. And a while ago, we were actually asked just to talk about this project, Lake Street Urban Stream, which I'm just super proud of. But I will actually, as I want to do, wanted to expand the topic and talk about the history that City of Canning had in this space with some really leading living stream projects. I'd also like to acknowledge that we're meeting today on Wajak Noongar Budja and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. And really acknowledge as well that these projects that we're speaking about actually are part of reconciliation. They're part of healing the land and creating these healthy, livable communities. And for us in Canning, it's the Jalgro Bilia. It's the Canning River. It's the heart of the city of Canning. It runs right through. And this is why we're doing these projects. Because just literally a few metres away from where I took that other photo, there's this oxygenation station, which is a life support system for this river system. It pumps oxygen in. Because of the depleted nature of the system, it needs life support because of the catchment and the nutrients flowing into that catchment and the way that we've treated our urban areas over the years as our cities developed and really as our drainage infrastructure. And today is really just to look at how some of these projects can really reverse that change and lead to the healing of the landscape, but lead to so many other benefits as well when we talk about greening and we talk about blue and we also talk about grey. And it's just fantastic to be here with IPWIA, with AILA and with Stormwater WA, because it's really about collaboration is how these projects happen. I could just talk about these slides, but I just put this up and another one in terms of water's role in livability. And a lot of the conversations over the years that I've been involved with have really been about wetlands and waterways and groundwater. And streams haven't been a big part of it. And when I moved to the city of Canning 6 years ago, we actually discovering these amazing drains and stream projects that were all throughout the city. Just such a resource. Even right now in the sort of tail end of this huge drought, we have streams flowing in areas because of that groundwater and that flow of water through the landscape. And when we look at sort of this vision and these ideas that we have about livability, I love this slide and I love where it came from, and I could just talk about this, but I need to stay on track, because this came from Waterwise Perth 1. Now Kep Kadajin, Gubby Gudajin, the Waterwise plan for Perth. And this shows the vision of what we could create. I won't get into all the details, but really it's about connecting people to nature and connecting people to water for livability outcomes. Because at the moment, and the way our city's developed, we haven't been doing that. We've typically had these type of systems, single use, fenced off, behind barbed wire, inaccessible, and just for that one purpose of drainage. And do have to acknowledge, while this is a Water Corp site, it's just been a privilege and a pleasure to work with all the people from the Water Corp, particularly the Livable Community section, and many others, to actually look at how we can transform these areas and change them from this single use to these multiple benefits. And today I'll talk a little bit about Bannister Creek, and I'll talk about another project before we get onto Lake Street. But I'm really also talking on behalf of others, because this project started well before my time. Julie Roberts, one of the absolute legends in this space, now working at, runs Fat Frog Consulting, Friends of Bannister Creek, Circle, Water Corp, all these amazing community members. Sorry? DBCA. I was getting there, Debbie. There's more. There's so many, and I probably will miss people, but also all the community members. So this was Bannister Creek back in Linwood, some really part of that channelized natural drain, and then over the years, Linwood just quite quickly with that vision to transform it back into a natural system, with ecologists working with engineers, working with landscape architects, with local community members to transform it And this is what it looks like now. And for so many people that travel and live in this area that haven't seen the development over the years, they just think it's a natural system. But it's an amazing example of how humans, and through design and through community initiative, we can really heal our landscape and take a different approach, because this is still part of that system. It is that old engineering, drop structures, fenced off, inaccessible, but then literally metres away we have areas like this that are just beautiful, biodiverse, amazing places to be in that help support people's health, their mental health, just visiting these places and having the birds around, but also physical health in terms of the pathway networks that connect these spaces. They're just such great examples, and Bannister Creek is one of those really key examples of an amazing project that has been a long game. And then we look at these types of structures, and we have similar engineered structures in there. They still create and have that purpose of flood protection and mitigating strong flows. But then they also have all these other elements, that the shading, the cooling, that people in nature. Also, biodiverse habitat, areas of large areas of plants that are full of frogs, that are stripping nutrients from the system and really leading to those health improvements in the Giles, which is just so important to take that system off life support. And it's really a landscape scale project, and this is what these systems can be. When we look at this aerial and what the Bannister Creek area now is, it's an amazing green spine through that whole area that links people and animals. It's not just about people, as Katrina mentioned earlier. Also, the flow of birds and turtles and frogs and plant species, and creating places of beauty within our landscape is just so important. And yeah, areas like this. Now look, I could talk about that a lot more, but I'm going to shift over quickly to another project and try and stay on track. And this is Nerdy Park. And this one, also similar cast of characters. There's been a lot of the same people, absolute legends in this space, working in this for many years. And it's a similar message that we really wanted to get across today in terms of the need to collaborate, to bring in the ecologists, with the landscape architects, with the civil engineers, with community members, with hydrologists, all different disciplines working together for an outcome. Many different people, some of which I shouted at earlier, also Dan Frisian from Perth NRM, many people from City of Canning on this. I'm just representing, talking about a project that was years in the making and involved many hours of labour from so many different people. And this was Nerdy Park. This was the fenced off drain. You can, going back just down the side, fenced off, one single use. But there was a vision to transform this because, again, high nutrients flowing into the Canning River, the Giles, and all the issues that go with that. And the opportunity that this little sketch by Brett Coleman starts to realise in terms of, we can renaturalise this drain. Nerdy Park was just pretty much a big turf park. It didn't have a lot of interest, and there was a lot of space there. And so this plan was developed with all those partners to actually create a living stream, but also a diversion and create a wetland within the park. And this has been embraced by the residents there. It hasn't led to a loss of the park. It's led to a greater richness being brought into the park. It's led to greater biodiversity within the park, and just creating a beautiful area. Part of that beauty is from the plants and the biodiversity that we bring back. And that's certainly a message. With these projects, we have such an amazing plant diversity in Western Australia. We should be planting as many species as we can for resilience, for diversity. But literally through these projects, we have the power to bring back biodiversity, to help be healing the land and creating those food sources for the insects, for the birds, and for the whole ecosystem. I'll just flick through quite quickly a couple of the photos of the project. Fenced off trapezoidal drain. Let's not go back into the details of 2020, but then quickly as the project progressed in 2021, that reshaping. And by 2022, it became this beautiful natural system. It's still adjusting, but we're getting really high counts of macroinvertebrates that are indicating a really high level of biodiversity within the system. And it's that thing of build it and they will come. Similarly with the wetland, rapid plant growth, we've got high nutrients, and that goes really well with plants in terms of those plants pulling those nutrients out of the system. And again, some more areas that just so quickly transformed into these natural systems. And for many visitors, for the first time, they just go, wow, like this project's amazing. It's been here for years, and going, no, it's actually only a few years old. But it's that power that we can have to transform our landscape for the better. Just a quick finishing up on the aerial of Nerdy, looking at that site with not a lot of interest to now, the path network, the local residents that are starting to actually form their own friends group and look after this site, the beauty that it brings into the space and the biodiversity, the cooling and the livability just speaks to why we should be doing so many more of these projects and the opportunities that exist within our urban areas to do so. Now I'll just touch on another large project and the intro into Lake Street. This is the Canning City Centre Master Plan. At the City of Canning, we're one of the strategic metropolitan growth areas to have high density living around transport nodes. And the City of Canning developed this vision to have a riverine city with the Jalgrow at the base of the city centre, but linking these amazing water assets that are all through the city to the growth of its urban area and creating these connections, bringing nature back into the city. How that might actually look more from a drainage management perspective, it's all these different drainage lines and spots all around the city that represent the drainage network that exists. But these also represent opportunities. We've had some amazing projects happen over the years at Wharf Street Wetlands and the Wharf Street Basin, and then recently with the Lake Street Urban Stream, which, funnily enough, started off like this. But it was through that vision, through that plan, and through the ideas, but also through the collaboration that we're able to transform this area. It started off with a number of concept designs, and I guess when I took this project on, it was also to start interrogating the designs and go, how am I going to build this? Or how are we, sorry, not I, it's a much bigger team. How are we going to build this? And how are we going to build it for the budget we've got? So we actually went through a design review process and started questioning some of the elements in the concept design, and actually made the decision to move to a design and construct process. And that is a good point to hand over to Shadra, and she's going to talk about the rest of the project and what we're able to achieve.
Thank you, Giles, and thank you everybody for coming to today's presentations. So my name's Shadra. I was the landscape architect from LD Total working on this project as a design and construct project. This was, and I'm going to fly through these because I'm very mindful of time. This was the kind of concept we had for this, and what was quite key about it was we needed to keep the drain in its current situation. We couldn't really be looking at relocating it or changing the channel or anything like that, which I'll talk a bit more further down the track, but basically due to acid sulfate situation. And as you can see, it was very much about creating linkages where we could and key footpath noted so that people could travel from the train station all the way through to the shopping centre. But what I'm going to talk about really is kind of the process of the construction, and as much as we came up against challenges, and there were significant challenges, we were able to overcome these, and I think it's a really good example of the fact that just because something looks too hard to do doesn't mean we shouldn't be doing it, and it takes a very collaborative group of people to be able to achieve that, and that is certainly what we had on this project. And I couldn't even name everyone who worked on this project because it was so many people and so many incredible people as well. But this gives you an idea of where we started. Hugely weed infested, which would have affected the hydrology of the drain in the first place. Little to no endemic species whatsoever, so the biodiversity would have been compromised at least to a certain extent. And it was a source of antisocial behaviour. there was no way you were going to be walking anywhere near this location with no lighting and in the middle of the night, male or female. So one of the first things we did, even before we got all the approvals in place, was to look at weed management. We wanted to make sure we treated all the weeds at their source and have a few years of weed management in there to make sure that the end product was going to be as true to endemic species as possible. And that utilised a series of sprays, which was obviously okay sprays for water drainage infrastructure, and also cutting down. We had poplars, we've got willow trees on here, we've got anything and everything. So that was kind of our first stage of it. And this is kind of what we ended up with once we kind of took that top layer of topsoil off. This also meant we could get rid of a lot of the seed bank, and it also meant we could actually see what we were working with. The reality of this site was it had been fenced off for over 50 years. No one knew what was under there. Surveys could tell us so much, but what we really needed to do was to clear that site and actually get in there and get started. As you can see, clay was another issue we came up against. It was H category, which was a great one to play with. And the little section up the top kind of shows you what we were dealing with the acid sulfate. So basically anything below the existing waterline, and this site is wet year round, we weren't going to be touching to avoid releasing that into the wider system. Also doing this project as a design and construct meant we could work through quite systematic, which meant a lot of especially this little family of ducks, which you'll see a few more times, they stayed on site during the whole construction. They actually had two seasons of ducklings on site during construction, which was quite fun. There we go. This shows the hydrology that we were dealing with. The red line is our 1 in 100 flood zone. So yes, everything floods. It's Perth. That's what happens everywhere. What we were able to do with the modelling for this and with redoing the sides of the drainage channel was we were able to actually bring that flood line in. So we steepened it up in areas and we shallowed it out in other areas, and we were very strategic about this during the design. Working with our civil engineers, working with the hydrologists, it was a constant backwards and forwards with everybody to basically bring that in and tighten it as much as possible while still providing amenity for the future community that will be through here. And this is kind of the process. This gives you an idea of what we were dealing with. So the drain itself is quite wide. The overall site at its widest is only 25 metres and its narrowest is only 20 metres. So it's an extremely constrained site, but we were still able to achieve it. It just meant it was a lot of interrogation and it was a lot of working together collaboratively. This gives you an idea of the walls, which we had to deal with in terms of the clay that was here. We removed a lot of clay, but we also had to contend with it there as well. So these retaining walls have concrete footings, they have ag drains behind them, they have Rio all through them. They are not moving in an earthquake. But it just shows that you can do it. And what we were able to do through the design and construct process as well was once we worked out exactly what levels we're doing, because they were different from the surveys we had, is we could push and pull these walls to where we needed them, and also to save money and to go through that side, because budget is obviously a constraint, able to push and pull that to get the best outcome in the end. This is our lovely family of ducks in the top corner. This is what they literally had about 12 ducklings that were there through the whole construction. But this gives you an idea and the process. So we've got the jute matting in the 1 in 1 flood zone for obvious reasons. And then we've got some exposed ag at one of the plaza ends as well. Very quick story about this timber. It's the most beautiful timber. It's from the Shelley Jetty that City of Canning had actually dismantled, and they'd kept this timber at their yard. I designed the deck to basically use up all the leftover timber that was usable, and that's now something that is there and speaks to the heritage of the City of Canning, which is just a beautiful aspect to be able to include in an urban space. And we also used the uprights for the balustrade. So all the key uprights are also from the Shelley Jetty, which was just really lovely. And that's probably my favourite piece in the whole project. Planting, this was huge. We planted close to 60 new endemic tree species, Banksias, Melaleucas, and Eucalyptus rudis, and we planted over 6,000 plants, comprising of about 50 different endemic species. And that biodiversity that we were able to put back into this project is just incredible. And I even jumped on Near Maps this morning to have a look at how it's looking, and it's mind-blowing. We were also able to retain a lot of the melaleucas that were on site, which obviously meant we had instant canopy and we were able to keep that. It also helps to stabilise the bank. Also reeds that we were able to keep as well, which meant there were little islands of refuge for the fauna during the construction as well, and that was just incredible. You could see as soon as we stepped back, you've got dragonflies, you've got invertebrates, you've got fish, you've got tadpoles. Like it just blew up. It was incredible. Again, this was just me talking about some of the retained plants. We did keep some willow trees, which kind of seems a bit counterintuitive. The reality is there is a nostalgic feeling to willows in these sorts of spaces, and there will be a long-term plan to eventually remove those as they deteriorate and as the endemic tree species grow and acclimatise to this area. And this is the finished product. And I mean, honestly, the end result kind of speaks for itself. This is an urban space, which is quite different to Bannister Creek and Nerdy Park. It's provided amenity for the local businesses. People come down and have their lunches there now. There is lighting, which you can see there. And it's just created a great green link in this area, in this highly urbanised area. And it just shows what you can do with these fenced off areas and how that just changes the absolute landscape around it. And just for the final one, this was the first rain event we had, the day after we finished mulching the project. Everyone came down to check it was surviving, and it did, which was absolutely amazing. The water levels went to exactly where we had modelled. It all just worked perfectly, and it was such a beautiful moment for everybody on the project team to just see it work exactly how it was meant to work, and it will continue to do so for many years to come. And that just shows you it a little bit further along. That's probably only 3 months, three or 4 months post, and it just shows what you can do. You've got existing water. You don't need to rely on irrigation. You don't need to rely on this. You've already got it there. These are perfect areas where we should be doing these projects. And that's it.